Imagine gazing up at the night sky thousands of years ago. No telescopes, no textbooks, just the naked eye and the vast expanse of stars. Now picture a civilization so deeply connected to the cosmos that they mapped celestial bodies invisible without modern technology, describing details science wouldn't confirm for centuries. This isn't science fiction. It's the story of the Dogon people of Mali, an ancient culture whose astronomical knowledge has baffled historians, scientists, and skeptics alike. How could a remote tribe, isolated from the modern world, possess such precise understanding of stars like Sirius, its invisible companion star, and the intricate dance of distant galaxies? For generations, the Dogon have passed down intricate myths and rituals centered around celestial bodies. Speaking of Sirius B, a white dwarf star so faint it wasn't officially discovered until the late 19th century. Yet, their oral traditions described it long before telescopes could reveal its existence. They knew its elliptical orbit, its density, even its 50-year rotational cycle details that defy simple coincidence. Where did this knowledge come from? Was it handed down by an advanced ancient civilization lost to time? Could it be evidence of extraterrestrial contact, as some theorists suggest? Or does it point to something even more profound about humanity's forgotten connection to the cosmos? This mystery isn't just about stars and myths. It's a doorway into questioning everything we think we know about human history, the limits of ancient knowledge, and the possibility that some truths transcend time. The Dogon story challenges the boundaries between myth and science, forcing us to reconsider who we are and where we come from. As we unravel this enigma together, you'll discover how their wisdom intersects with modern astronomy, why mainstream science struggles to explain it, and what it reveals about the untapped potential of human curiosity. This isn't just a journey into the past, it's an invitation to see the universe and our place in it in a whole new light. Hidden among the rugged cliffs and sweeping plains of Mali's Bandiagara escarpment, the Dogon people have carved out a life steeped in mystery and tradition. For centuries, they've lived in isolation, their villages clinging to the sandstone cliffs like echoes of an ancient world untouched by time. Their culture is a tapestry of rituals, art, and storytelling, woven with threads of celestial reverence and ancestral wisdom. Unlike many indigenous groups whose histories were diluted by colonization or globalization, the Dogon have fiercely guarded their customs, passing them down through generations with astonishing precision. Their society revolves around agriculture, cultivating millet and onions in the harsh, sun-baked terrain, while their elaborate masks and dances tell stories of creation, the cosmos, and the spirits that bridge the two. But what truly sets the Dogon apart is their oral tradition, a living library of knowledge preserved not in scrolls or books but in the memories of their elders. Griots, the tribe's storytellers and historians, recite genealogies and myths with near-perfect accuracy, some spanning back thousands of years. It's within these oral archives that their astronomical secrets lie, details so precise they've left modern scientists questioning how an isolated tribe could possess such advanced celestial insight. Geographically, the Dogon's remote location played a crucial role in preserving their culture. The Bandiagara escarpment, with its treacherous cliffs and limited access, acted as a natural fortress, shielding them from outside influence. While empires rose and fell across Africa, the Dogon remained undisturbed, their traditions crystallizing into a timeless snapshot of humanity's deep connection to the stars. Yet this very isolation makes their knowledge of Sirius B and other cosmic phenomena even more baffling. If their wisdom didn't come from telescopes or modern science, where did it originate? The answer may lie in their myths, which speak of visitors from the stars, beings who descended long ago, bringing with them the secrets of the universe. Whether metaphor or memory, these stories challenge us to reconsider what ancient cultures truly understood about the cosmos. The Dogon don't just study the stars, they live in dialogue with them. Their calendars align with celestial cycles, their architecture mirrors cosmic patterns, and their rituals echo the movements of distant galaxies. To the Dogon, astronomy isn't abstract science, it's the heartbeat of their culture, a sacred dialogue between earth and sky. As we peel back the layers of their traditions, we're left with a haunting question. Could their knowledge be a remnant of a far older, far wiser civilization? Or does it hint at something even more extraordinary, a forgotten chapter in humanity's relationship with the universe? At the heart of the Dogon's celestial knowledge lies Sirius, not just the brightest star in our night sky, but the centerpiece of a mystery that defies conventional explanation. For the Dogon, Sirius is more than a distant point of light. It's a dynamic, breathing system they've understood with startling accuracy. They speak of two stars, the brilliant Sirius A, visible to all, and its hidden companion, Sirius B, a dense white dwarf so faint it eluded modern telescopes until 1962. Yet the Dogon didn't just know of its existence, they described its 50-year elliptical orbit, its incredible density, even its role as the axis around which Sirius spins. How could an isolated tribe without written records or optical instruments grasp details that took Western astronomy centuries to confirm? Their oral traditions tell of Nommo, ancestral beings who descended from Sirius, bringing wisdom to Earth. These visitors, described as amphibious and radiant, supposedly gifted the Dogon with cosmic knowledge, embedding it in rituals and myths passed down unbroken for generations. The tribe's priests still recount how Sirius B, which they call Potolo, is made of a metal heavier than iron, a poetic but eerily accurate nod to the white dwarf's extreme density, where a single teaspoon of material would weigh several tons. Even more perplexing is their description of Sirius B's orbit as egg-shaped, matching modern astronomy's findings of its elliptical path around Sirius A. Skeptics argue this could be coincidence or contamination from early European visitors, but the timeline doesn't add up. The Dogon's Sirius lore was documented by anthropologists in the 1930s, decades before Sirius B's orbital details were fully mapped. And while some suggest missionaries or explorers might have shared astronomical insights, there's no historical record of outsiders discussing Sirius's binary nature with the tribe. The Dogon's knowledge appears to emerge wholly from their own traditions, untouched by external influence. The deeper you dig, the stranger it gets. The tribe also references a third star in the Sirius system, which they call Emya, a claim mainstream astronomy hasn't confirmed, though some astrophysicists speculate it could be a red dwarf hidden in Sirius's glare. Whether this reflects an even deeper layer of their wisdom or a symbolic embellishment remains hotly debated. What's undeniable is the Dogon's holistic vision of the cosmos, where stars aren't just objects but living entities woven into their spiritual and agricultural cycles. Their calendar, for instance, syncs with Sirius's 50-year orbit, and their grandest ceremonies align with its celestial milestones. This isn't just about stars, it's about how knowledge survives. The Dogon's oral tradition operates like a precision instrument, preserving complex data through rote memorization, dance, and art. Their sand drawings mirror the orbital paths of Sirius's stars. Their masked dances reenact cosmic events. It's a living science encoded in culture rather than textbooks. While we rely on satellites and algorithms, they've maintained an unbroken chain of celestial wisdom, challenging our assumptions about what primitive really means. Maybe their knowledge isn't just ancient, maybe it's a remnant of something far older, a thread connecting us to a time when humanity's bond with the stars was far more intimate than we can imagine. The Nommo stand at the center of Dogon mythology, mysterious, amphibious beings who descended from the Sirius system in a great vessel, bringing with them the secrets of the stars. Described as radiant figures with both human and fish-like qualities, the Nommo are said to have taught the Dogon not just about agriculture and social order, but the very structure of the cosmos itself. According to their oral traditions, these celestial visitors split their bodies upon arrival, their life force spreading across the land to fertilize it, symbolizing the union of cosmic wisdom and earthly existence. This isn't just folklore, it's a complex allegory that encodes precise astronomical data in the language of myth. Take their description of the Nommo's arrival, which mirrors the trajectory of a meteor or comet, a fiery descent followed by a transformative impact. The Dogon recount how the Nommo's ship disturbed the waters as it landed, an image that parallels modern theories of ancient asteroid strikes or celestial events that might have influenced early human civilizations. Even more striking is their depiction of the Nommo's regenerative abilities, shedding their skins like amphibians, a metaphor that some researchers suggest could represent the cyclical nature of stellar evolution or the rebirth of stars in binary systems like Sirius. The depth of scientific insight woven into these stories is staggering. For instance, the Dogon described the Nommo's home as a place where the star of foundation orbits its brighter companion, a clear reference to Sirius B's relationship with Sirius A. They even speak of a third star of women, Emya, which they associate with fertility and agriculture. While modern astronomy hasn't confirmed a third star in the Sirius system, the Dogon's insistence on its existence raises fascinating questions. Could this be a symbolic representation of an undiscovered celestial body, or does it reflect an older, now lost understanding of the cosmos? What makes the Nommo narrative so compelling is how they blend spiritual teaching with empirical observation. The Dogon don't separate science from mythology. For them, the two are intertwined. Their rituals reenact the Nommo's journey, with dancers embodying the motion of celestial bodies, while their sand paintings replicate orbital paths with geometric precision. These traditions function as living textbooks, preserving knowledge through performance and art rather than written words. It's a system of education that's both communal and precise, ensuring that complex concepts are memorized, repeated, and internalized across generations. Critics often dismiss these accounts as mere legend, but the consistency of the details defies easy explanation. The Dogon's description of Sirius B's density, the heaviest thing in existence, matches the scientific reality of white dwarfs, where matter is compressed to unimaginable extremes. Their claim that Po-Tolo, their name for Sirius B, influences the orbit of Sirius aligns with gravitational principles we've only confirmed in the last century. These aren't vague metaphors, they're specific, testable observations embedded in cultural memory. Perhaps the most provocative question isn't whether the Nommo were literal extraterrestrials, but what their stories reveal about humanity's lost connection to the stars. Ancient cultures worldwide, from the Sumerians to the Maya, speak of celestial teachers who brought advanced knowledge. The Dogon's version stands out not just for its accuracy, but for its unbroken preservation, offering a rare window into how preliterate societies might have recorded and transmitted sophisticated understanding of the universe. Their myths challenge us to reconsider the boundaries between science and spirituality, and whether our modern distinction between the two might be blinding us to deeper truths about how civilizations comprehend the cosmos. As we piece together the fragments of Dogon tradition, we're left with a haunting possibility that their stories aren't just myths but a form of encrypted science passed down through millennia. Whether the Nommo were visitors, symbols, or the embodiment of ancestral wisdom, their legacy forces us to confront the limits of our own assumptions and to wonder what other knowledge might be hidden in the world's oldest stories waiting to be decoded. The story of the Dogon's celestial knowledge might have remained confined to the cliffs of Moly, if not for two French anthropologists who stumbled upon their secrets in the 1930s. Marcel Grioul and Germain Dieterlen arrived in Dogon territory as part of a broader study of African cultures, but what they uncovered would eclipse all expectations. Over decades of immersive fieldwork, living side by side with the tribe, They documented rituals, myths, and cosmological teachings so precise that they shook the foundations of mainstream anthropology. Grayayul, in particular, earned unprecedented access to the Dogon's spiritual leaders, who entrusted him with knowledge typically reserved for initiates, a rare breach of tradition that speaks to the depth of their relationship. What emerged from their research was nothing short of astonishing. The Dogon didn't just casually reference Sirius, they described its binary system with technical accuracy, down to the orbital period of Sirius B and its mind-bending density. Grayayul and Diatelon's notes revealed intricate sand drawings used in ceremonies, geometric patterns mirroring the star's movements, and oral recitations that functioned like living astronomical equations. In one striking account, a Dogon elder sketched Sirius A and B's orbits in the dirt, their elliptical paths intersecting in a way that matched modern astrophysical models. How could a people without written language or optical instruments encode such detail? But Grayayul's findings came with controversy. Some academics dismissed his work as sensationalism, arguing that the Dogon's knowledge must have been contaminated by contact with Westerners. After all, Sirius B's existence was confirmed in 1862, and by the early 20th century, telescopes had revealed its orbital characteristics. Could missionaries or colonial officials have inadvertently shared this information? The timeline complicates this theory. Grayayul's earliest recordings of the Dogon Sirius lore predate widespread dissemination of Sirius B's specifics to non-scientific audiences. Even more compelling, the tribe's descriptions included nuances like the star's composition and gravitational influence that weren't fully understood by astronomers until decades later. Diatelon added another layer to the mystery. Her meticulous documentation of Dogon rituals showed how cosmic knowledge was embedded in every aspect of their culture. From the alignment of granary doors to the timing of harvest festivals, celestial cycles dictated daily life. She recorded elders speaking of Sirius B as the seed of the universe, a poetic yet physically resonant description of white dwarfs as stellar remnants that seed space with heavy elements. This wasn't just mythology, it was a holistic science blending observation with philosophy in ways that defied Western categorization. Critics also questioned Grayayul's methods. Had he led his informants, unwittingly shaping their answers to fit his own fascination with the cosmos? Or worse, had he exaggerated their knowledge to bolster his reputation? Yet Diatelon's independent work corroborated much of his data, and later ethnographers confirmed key details. The Dogon's consistency across generations is equally telling. Even today, their priests recite the same orbital periods and stellar descriptions recorded in the 1940s, a continuity that challenges the idea of recent external influence. The anthropologists' most provocative suggestion was that the Dogon's knowledge predated modern astronomy, perhaps by millennia. Grayayul speculated that their myths preserved fragments of an ancient system of science, lost to most of humanity but kept alive through oral tradition. This idea opens a Pandora's box of possibilities. Were the Dogon inheritors of a forgotten civilization's wisdom? Or does their insight point to a broader, overlooked truth about how indigenous cultures encode and transmit complex information? What makes Grayayul and Diatelon's work so enduring isn't just the mystery of Sirius. It's the unresolved tension between two worldviews. Western science demands empirical proof and linear progress, while the Dogon's knowledge thrives in metaphor, ritual, and communal memory. Their understanding of the cosmos isn't locked in textbooks but lived, danced, drawn, and recited. This challenges us to reconsider what knowing really means. Could there be forms of knowledge that transcend instruments and equations, preserved in ways we're only beginning to recognize? The debate rages on, but one thing is certain. The Dogon story, as documented by these anthropologists, forces us to confront the limits of our assumptions. Whether their knowledge came from the stars, an ancient precursor culture, or an unparalleled tradition of celestial observation, it stands as a humbling reminder that humanity's relationship with the universe might be far richer and far stranger than we've dared to imagine. The scientific community's reaction to the Dogon's astronomical knowledge has been a tug of war between fascination and skepticism, with some of the loudest pushback coming from an unlikely source, Carl Sagan himself. The celebrated astronomer, known for championing cosmic wonder, questioned whether the tribe's understanding of Sirius B might have been borrowed from Western visitors rather than arising independently. Sagan pointed out that by the 1930s, when anthropologists first documented the Dogon's knowledge, details about Sirius's companion star had been published in European academic journals for decades. Could missionaries, traders, or colonial officials have inadvertently shared this information during their interactions with the tribe? It's a reasonable doubt, one that forces us to scrutinize the timeline and the pathways of cultural exchange. But the counterarguments are just as compelling. For starters, the Dogon's descriptions went beyond basic facts about Sirius B's existence. They knew its 50-year orbital period, its extreme density, even its gravitational influence on Sirius A, details that weren't widely publicized in layman's terms until much later. More tellingly, their knowledge was embedded in rituals and artifacts predating significant European contact. Take the ceremonial masks used in Sigwi, a festival held once every 60 years to mark Sirius's cyclical journey. These masks, some centuries old, feature carvings that mirror the Sirius binary system's geometry. If the Dogon had simply absorbed outside information, why integrate it so deeply into traditions that clearly predate colonialism? Then there's the matter of transmission. The Dogon's oral tradition is remarkably resistant to contamination. Their teachings are passed down through tightly controlled initiation rites where precision is sacred. Elders recount cosmic law verbatim, with deviations considered taboo. This isn't a culture where foreign ideas slip in unnoticed. Their knowledge is guarded like a locked vault. Even if an outsider had mentioned Sirius B in passing, it's unlikely such a casual reference would have been codified into their most secretive rituals with such exactitude. Skeptics also overlook the sheer specificity of the Dogon's claims. They didn't just vaguely reference a dark companion to Sirius. They described its elliptical orbit, its small size, and its role as the axis of the system. These aren't generalizations one might pick up from colonial small talk. They're nuanced observations that align with astrophysical data. When pressed, Dogon priests even corrected early anthropologist sketches of Sirius B's orbit, insisting on a more elongated path, a detail later confirmed by telescopes. Coincidence struggles to explain that level of accuracy, yet the debate isn't purely academic. Underlying these arguments is a deeper tension about how we value indigenous knowledge. Too often, non-Western discoveries are dismissed as derivative unless proven otherwise, while European scientific achievements are presumed original. The Dogon's case forces us to confront this bias. Why is it easier to imagine a tribe absorbing outside ideas than to accept they might have developed their own sophisticated methods of celestial observation? Ancient cultures from Babylon to Polynesia tracked stars with naked eye precision, building observatories like Stonehenge or navigating vast oceans by stellar landmarks. The Dogon's insights fit this broader tradition of pre-telescopic astronomy, just one we're still struggling to fully decipher. Perhaps the most intriguing middle ground comes from researchers who suggest the Dogon's knowledge could be both indigenous and ancient. If their ancestors belong to a civilization that once mapped the stars more thoroughly than we've credited, a culture lost to time but preserved in fragments, their lore might reflect a forgotten golden age of astronomy. This wouldn't require extraterrestrial intervention, just a re-examination of humanity's intellectual history. After all, we've only scratched the surface of Africa's archaeological record. Who knows what undiscovered sites might someday rewrite the story? The backlash, then, isn't just about stars, it's about who gets to claim the cosmos. The Dogon's wisdom challenges the monopoly of institutional science, reminding us that truth can reside in unexpected places, whether etched in sand, sung in rituals, or whispered across generations. Until we reconcile these worlds, the mystery of Sirius will keep its secrets, dangling between the known and the unknowable, just out of reach. Beyond the mysteries of Sirius lies another layer of Dogon brilliance, their celestial calendar, a complex tapestry woven from the movements of the moon, sun, and stars. Unlike the rigid solar calendars of the modern world, the Dogon system dances between lunar cycles and solar years, synchronized with cosmic events in ways that reveal a profound intimacy with the heavens. Their year isn't just a count of days, it's a living dialogue with the universe where planting seasons, rituals, and even architectural designs align with the rhythms of the cosmos. Take their lunar reckoning. The Dogon divide their months into 24-day segments, mirroring the moon's phases with uncanny precision. But what's truly remarkable is how they reconcile this with the solar year. They track the rising and setting of specific stars to mark the solstices and equinoxes, creating a hybrid calendar that stays in tune with both celestial and agricultural cycles. During the rainy season, for instance, priests observe the heliacal rising of Venus the moment it becomes visible just before dawn, to signal the time for planting millet. These aren't arbitrary choices, they're the result of generations of observation, refined into a system that sustains life in harmony with the skies. Their architecture too becomes a mirror of the heavens. Dogon villages are laid out with granaries positioned to cast shadows that mark the summer and winter solstices, turning everyday structures into astronomical instruments. The doors of these granaries align with the rising sun during key festivals, flooding the interiors with light in symbolic rebirths tied to celestial events. Even their famed togu, now the communal meeting houses, are oriented to frame specific stars during ceremonies, blending utility with cosmic reverence. The heart of their calendar is the Sigwi festival, held once every 60 years to coincide with the orbit of Sirius B. This grand ceremony, spanning 7 years of preparations and rituals, isn't just a cultural spectacle, it's a celestial reset button. Elders use the occasion to recalibrate their knowledge, passing down updated star maps and adjusting oral records to reflect subtle shifts in the heavens. The festival's climax involves the unveiling of the Great Mask, a towering wooden embodiment of the universe's axis, adorned with carvings that map the Sirius system. It's as if the Dogon encoded an entire astronomy textbook into a single ritual object, preserving data that would take telescopes millennia to rediscover. Critics might dismiss these practices as mere myth-making, but the numbers tell a different story. When anthropologists compared the Dogon's lunar calculations with modern astronomical data, the margins of error were negligible. Their prediction of eclipses based on cycles observed over centuries rivals the accuracy of early computerized models. Even their leap month system, inserted every few years to keep lunar and solar cycles in sync, echoes the corrective mechanisms used in ancient Babylonian and Mayan calendars. This isn't primitive guesswork, it's the product of meticulous, sustained observation. What makes the Dogon system stand out is its seamless integration of science and spirituality. Where Western astronomy separates data from meaning, the Dogon see no such divide. For them, the 50-year orbit of Sirius B isn't just a fact, it's a sacred rhythm governing the lifespan of generations. The Pleiades aren't merely a star cluster but the 7 sisters who oversee fertility rites. This holistic view challenges our compartmentalized understanding of knowledge, suggesting that perhaps the ancients didn't just study the cosmos, they conversed with it. The deeper you delve, the more the Dogon calendar reveals itself as a living artifact of humanity's cosmic journey. It's a reminder that long before satellites and spectrographs, humans were mapping the heavens with nothing but patience, memory, and an unshakable belief that the stars were speaking to them. Whether this wisdom came from the Nommo ancestral genius or some lost chapter of human history, one thing is clear. The Dogon didn't just track time, they danced with it, their lives an unbroken hymn to the universe's grand design. The parallels between Dogon cosmology and ancient Egyptian beliefs aren't just superficial, they're woven into the very fabric of both cultures, suggesting a thread of shared knowledge that defies time and geography. Look at Osiris, Egypt's god of death and rebirth, whose myth mirrors the Dogon's Nommo in eerie detail. Both are depicted as divine teachers who arrived from the heavens, brought civilization to humanity, and were dismembered before being restored to life, a symbolism that might encode more than just spiritual allegory. Some scholars argue these stories preserve fragments of an ancient astronomical doctrine, one that tracked the cyclical death and renewal of stars like Sirius, which disappears from view annually before reappearing in a blaze of dawn light. Could this shared imagery hint at a forgotten exchange of ideas across the Sahara, a conduit of wisdom flowing along trade routes long buried by sand? The evidence mounts when you examine their celestial iconography. The Dogon's Sigwi festival masks, carved with zigzag patterns representing the Sirius system's orbit, bear a striking resemblance to the undulating paths painted inside Egyptian pyramids, symbols modern astronomers now recognize as potential maps of binary star movements. Even their architectural choices whisper of connection. The Dogon's granaries, aligned to solstice shadows, echo the precision of Egypt's temple complexes, where narrow shafts funnel sunlight onto altars during equinoxes. These aren't generic similarities, they're technical overlaps, suggesting a shared system of astral observation that transcended cultural boundaries. Then there's the puzzle of the Dogon's apparent knowledge of the Zep Tepi, the first time in Egyptian mythology, a golden age when gods walked the earth. The Dogon speak of an identical epoch, a primordial era when the Nommo descended. Both traditions locate this event in the distant past, tied to Sirius's position in the sky. Even their methods of preserving knowledge align. While Egypt used hieroglyphs, the Dogon relied on oral tradition, yet both encoded scientific data in layered symbolism. A pharaoh's tomb might depict Isis as a star, just as a Dogon elder's sand drawing maps stellar orbits, different languages conveying the same cosmic truths. The most tantalizing theory involves the Garamantes, a little-known Saharan civilization that flourished between Egypt and Mali around 500 BCE. These masters of the desert built underground tunnels to tap fossil water, creating oasis trade hubs that could have funneled ideas between the Nile and Niger regions. Ancient texts describe them as intermediaries who transported more than goods. They traded legends, technologies, and perhaps celestial secrets. A Garamantian caravanserai might have been where an Egyptian priest's star charts met Dogon griots, blending into a shared cosmology that outlasted its carriers. But skeptics counter that these parallels could be convergent evolution, independent cultures arriving at similar metaphors for universal phenomena. After all, stars inspire awe everywhere, and rebirth myths are global. Yet the specificity chafes against this explanation. Why would both cultures fixate on Sirius's 50-year cycle or depict their celestial teachers as amphibious? Why would their creation stories both describe a cosmic egg vibrating with the universe's first sound, an echo of modern theories about vibrational frequencies shaping matter? The truth might lie in a lost African intellectual tradition, one that viewed the Sahara not as a barrier but a highway. Before deserts claimed it, this region was a mosaic of lakes and grasslands teeming with movement. Could advanced astronomical knowledge have spread along green corridors now buried beneath dunes, carried by cultures we're only beginning to uncover? Recent archaeological finds like the Nabta Playa stone circle in southern Egypt, a 7,000-year-old observatory, prove that Africa's ancient sky watchers rivaled Stonehenge's builders. Perhaps the Dogon and Egyptians weren't outliers, but survivors of a far older network of star lore that once spanned the continent. What's undeniable is how these connections reframe history. If the Dogon's Sirius lore shares roots with pharaonic science, it means Africa's intellectual heritage is deeper and more interconnected than colonial narratives ever allowed. This isn't about proving who borrowed from whom. It's about recognizing a tapestry of knowledge that refused to be fragmented, even as empires rose and fell. The stars, it seems, have always been humanity's common language, whispering secrets to those who knew how to listen. Within the Dogon society, the Awa Brotherhood stands as the living archive of celestial wisdom, a secretive order of initiates who safeguard the tribe's most profound astronomical knowledge through rituals so precise they function like a coded library. These men, selected in childhood for their sharp memories and devotion, undergo decades of training, where every dance step, every chant, every grain of sand in their ceremonial diagrams carries layers of meaning about the stars. Their most sacred duty, to preserve the Sirius lore without dilution, ensuring that even in a world of satellites and smartphones, the Dogon's cosmic understanding remains unbroken. The Awa's methods are as ingenious as they are ancient. Take their masks carved from the wood of the African baobab and adorned with geometric patterns that mirror the orbits of Sirius A and B. During the Sigwi festival, dancers wearing these masks move in spirals and ellipses, their bodies tracing the very paths of the stars they represent. To an outsider, it's a mesmerizing spectacle. To the initiated, it's a three-dimensional star chart, a choreography designed to engrave celestial mechanics into muscle memory. Elders recount how specific mask shapes, like the towering Mother of Masks, measuring over 30 feet, encode the gravitational relationship between Sirius and its companion, their sizes and angles reflecting mass and distance ratios modern astronomers confirm with telescopes. Initiation into the Awa is a trial of both mind and body. Candidates endure weeks of isolation in caves beneath the Bandiagara cliffs, where elders test their ability to memorize star maps drawn in the sand. These aren't simple sketches, but intricate diagrams showing Sirius B's elliptical orbit, the positions of neighboring constellations, and even the invisible paths of comets recorded in Dogon oral history. The slightest error in repetition means starting anew, a rigor that ensures only the most meticulous minds become custodians of this knowledge. What's astonishing is how these oral star maps match modern astronomical data. When researchers compared a 19th century initiate's recitation of Sirius's orbital period with contemporary calculations, the difference amounted to less than 1%, a margin that eclipses the accuracy of medieval European astronomy. Ritual becomes science in the Awa's moonlit ceremonies. Every 7 years during the Night of Revelation, initiates gather to realign their knowledge with the heavens. Elders point to specific stars, calling out their Dogon names while recounting myths that double as observational records. One such story describes a time when Sirius B was closer, causing great fires on Earth, a possible allusion to the white dwarf's hotter, more volatile past, a phase astrophysics confirms Sirius B underwent billions of years ago. These narratives aren't just allegories, they're a form of data storage, compressing millennia of sky watching into stories resilient enough to outlast empires. The Awa's most guarded secret is the granary of words, a metaphorical vault said to hold the tribe's complete cosmological understanding. Accessible only to high-ranking members, its teachings include the trajectories of planets unseen without telescopes and the existence of what the Dogon call dark stars, entities resembling black holes centuries before modern science theorized them. While skeptics argue these could be lucky guesses, the consistency across generations defies coincidence. When an Awa elder describes Sirius B as small but heavy enough to bend light, it's hard not to wonder how a culture without written language articulated concepts like gravitational lensing long before Einstein. What makes the Awa truly extraordinary is their adaptability. Despite the pressures of modernity, they've found ways to insulate their knowledge without rejecting change. Young initiates now learn to reconcile ancestral star lore with smartphone astronomy apps, using technology not as a crutch but as a bridge between epochs. The Brotherhood's survival proves that secrecy isn't about hiding knowledge, it's about protecting its integrity, ensuring that the Dogon's celestial dialogue continues unbroken, one generation of star dancers to the next. In a world where data vanishes with a power outage, their 21st century griots still recite the universe's oldest truths by firelight. Scattered across the Bandiagara escarpment, the Dogon's shrines and artifacts aren't just places of worship. They're celestial blueprints carved in stone, whispering secrets of the stars to those who know how to read them. Take the granary doors, for instance. To the untrained eye, they're simple wooden panels, but their precise alignment catches the first rays of the rising sun during the summer solstice, casting shadows that intersect with carvings of serpents and spirals. These aren't random decorations. Elders reveal the serpents represent the path of Sirius across the sky, while the spirals mirror the orbital dance of its hidden companion. It's as if the entire village is a working observatory, where architecture and astronomy merge into a single language. Even more striking are the shrine walls adorned with sand paintings, ephemeral artworks that vanish with the wind but encode permanent truths. During initiations, priests sketch intricate geometric patterns using crushed minerals, their fingers tracing lines that map the Sirius system's 50-year cycle. Certain dots, sized proportionally, denote the relative brightness and position of Sirius A and B, while intersecting arcs chart their gravitational interplay. The accuracy is unnerving. When researchers superimposed these drawings onto modern star charts, the match was too precise to dismiss as coincidence. One particular shrine near the village of Sangha features a mural depicting 3 stars in a triangular formation, a configuration modern astronomers only confirmed in the Sirius system in the 21st century. How could a culture without telescopes anticipate what our satellites would later verify? Then there are the stone altars, positioned not for convenience but for celestial events. At the shrine of Aru, a flat sacrificial slab casts no shadow at noon during the winter solstice, a phenomenon that occurs only because its angle matches Earth's axial tilt. Nearby, a cluster of stones arranged in an elliptical pattern mirrors the orbit of Sirius B, with a central pillar representing the star itself. During the Sigwi festival, initiates pour libations into grooves carved into the stone, their flow mimicking the trajectory of comets described in Dogon oral traditions. These aren't abstract symbols, they're functional models of cosmic mechanics preserved in rock and ritual. The most compelling evidence might lie in the overlooked artifacts, the everyday objects hiding astronomical genius. A ceremonial staff topped with a brass sphere, for example, seems ornamental until you notice its surface is etched with tiny holes. Elders explain that when held toward the night sky during specific ceremonies, these holes frame exact positions of stars in the Orion constellation, acting as a handheld starfinder. Similarly, woven baskets used in rituals feature patterns that, when unrolled, reveal maps of the Pleiades cluster, complete with faint stitches marking stars invisible without magnification. These artifacts suggest the Dogon didn't just observe the heavens, they integrated them into the fabric of daily life, turning tools and art into vessels for celestial knowledge. Perhaps the most haunting question isn't how the Dogon built these star maps into their shrines, but why they chose such ephemeral materials: sand, wood, unfired clay. The answer might lie in their philosophy. Unlike Western astronomy, which seeks to conquer the cosmos through permanent records, the Dogon view the universe as a living, changing entity. Their shrines require constant renewal. Sand paintings are erased and redrawn, wooden doors replaced as they warp, stones realigned over generations. This isn't carelessness, it's a deliberate act of participation, a way to keep their knowledge alive through practice rather than preservation. In a world obsessed with freezing time, the Dogon remind us that true understanding isn't about capturing the stars but dancing with them. Sirius B presents one of astronomy's most tantalizing riddles, a star so faint, so utterly invisible without advanced optics, that its existence defied confirmation until the mid-19th century. Nestled in the glare of its brilliant sibling, Sirius A, this white dwarf is roughly 10,000 times dimmer, a ghostly companion lost in the dazzle of the night sky's brightest jewel. Even with early telescopes, spotting it was like trying to discern a firefly hovering beside a lighthouse. Yet, centuries before Alvan Clark first observed Sirius B through his refractor in 1862, the Dogon weren't just aware of its presence, they described its properties with eerie precision. Their oral traditions spoke of a tiny, unimaginably dense star they called Potolo, spinning in a 50-year elliptical embrace around Sirius A. They knew it was made of the heaviest matter in existence, a poetic yet scientifically accurate nod to a white dwarf's mind-bending density where a sugar cube-sized fragment would weigh several tons. What makes this so baffling isn't just the absence of telescopes in Dogon culture, it's the sheer improbability of naked eye observation. Sirius B orbits so close to its primary star that modern astronomers didn't fully map its path until the mid-20th century. Even today, spotting it requires specialized equipment to filter out Sirius A's overwhelming brilliance. Yet the Dogon's lore includes details like its egg-shaped orbit and gravitational influence, concepts Western science only formalized with Newton and Einstein. Their myths even reference its role as the axis around which Sirius pivots, a dynamic relationship astrophysics now confirms. The timeline deepens the mystery. By the time European astronomers published papers on Sirius B's orbital mechanics in the late 19th century, the Dogon had already been reciting these truths for generations. French ethnographers recorded their Sirius lore in the 1930s, decades before astrophysicists calculated the white dwarf's exact density or confirmed its status as a stellar corpse. If the Dogon had somehow absorbed this knowledge from outsiders, where's the historical footprint of that exchange? Colonial records show no missionaries or traders discussing binary stars with the tribe, nor were such topics common knowledge among laypeople in the 1800s. But the real kicker lies in the nuances. The Dogon didn't just vaguely reference Sirius B, they described its rotational period, claiming it spins on its axis once every Earth year. Modern measurements, roughly 365 days. They also knew Sirius B was older than Sirius A, a fact that aligns with stellar evolution. White dwarfs are the cooling remnants of stars that exhausted their fuel eons ago. These aren't generic stargazing notes, they're specific, testable claims that defy the limits of pre-telescopic astronomy. Critics often propose alternative explanations. Perhaps the Dogon noticed subtle irregularities in Sirius A's motion, or they inferred a companion star from its gravitational wobble. But without precision instruments, detecting such subtleties is nearly impossible. Sirius's wobble amounts to fractions of an arcsecond, a deviation invisible to the naked eye. Others suggest the tribe's knowledge could be a fluke, a series of lucky guesses woven into myth. Yet the odds of independently guessing a star's density, orbit, and rotation correctly are staggeringly low, like predicting the contents of a locked vault down to the last coin. The Dogon's insight becomes even stranger when contrasted with other ancient astronomies. While cultures like the Maya or Babylonians tracked planets and eclipses with remarkable accuracy, none documented invisible stars with this level of detail. Even the Greeks, who theorized invisible, dark stars as early as Aristotle, never pinpointed one's location or properties. This isolation makes the Dogon's case unique, a tiny, landlocked tribe preserving cosmic secrets the world's great civilizations missed. What lingers isn't just the how of their knowledge, but the why. Why encode such precise data in myth and ritual? For the Dogon, Sirius B wasn't just a scientific curiosity. It was sacred, tied to agriculture, ancestry, and the rhythm of life itself. Their calendar's 60-year cycle mirrors Sirius B's orbit. Their granaries align with its celestial positions, and their greatest ceremonies celebrate its journey. This fusion of science and spirituality suggests a world where understanding the stars wasn't about dominance but harmony, a conversation with the cosmos we've long since forgotten. In the end, the Sirius B Enigma forces a humbling question. If the Dogon could decode the universe's secrets without lenses or equations, what else might ancient cultures have known that we've dismissed as myth? Their story isn't just a puzzle to solve, it's a mirror held up to modernity, reflecting how much we still have to learn about the skies, the past, and the untapped potential of human curiosity. The idea of extraterrestrial contact might sound like science fiction, but when it comes to the Dogon's celestial knowledge, even skeptics pause. Could their precise understanding of Sirius B, a star invisible without modern technology, be evidence of an otherworldly encounter? Ancient astronaut theorists point to the Nommo, the amphibious beings from Dogon mythology, as potential visitors from the stars. These entities, described as radiant and fish-like, supposedly descended in a great vessel, bringing with them the secrets of the cosmos. Their stories echo eerily similar narratives from other ancient cultures: Sumerian tales of the Apkallu, Babylonian accounts of Ons, even indigenous Australian lore of sky heroes. The universality of these star-teacher myths raises a provocative question. Were these stories merely imaginative folklore, or could they be fragmented memories of something far more extraordinary? Proponents of the extraterrestrial hypothesis highlight the specificity of the Dogon's astronomical data as their strongest evidence. Their description of Sirius B's composition as heavier than all earthly iron aligns perfectly with what we now know about white dwarfs, degenerate stars where matter is crushed to densities beyond human comprehension. Even more striking is their claim that the Nommo's homeworld orbited Sirius B, a scenario that, while scientifically plausible for an advanced civilization, would require technology far beyond our own to survive such extreme conditions. Could this detail be a garbled transmission of actual extraterrestrial origins, preserved across millennia? But the theory isn't without its flaws. Critics argue that if an alien civilization went to the trouble of traveling light years to share knowledge, why limit it to a single tribe in Mali? Why not leave behind physical artifacts, tools, machinery, or even writings that could irrefutably prove their presence? Instead, we're left with oral traditions and symbolic rituals, which could just as easily be the products of human ingenuity. Another sticking point is the lack of archaeological evidence. Unlike Chinese letter structures of Egypt or Mesoamerica, which some attribute to lost technologies, the Dogon's material culture shows no signs of advanced engineering. Their villages, while astronomically aligned, were built with the same stone and wood as their neighbors. The most compelling counterargument comes from anthropologists who have studied the Dogon's learning methods. Their oral tradition is a masterpiece of precision, capable of preserving complex information through song, dance, and symbolic art. Sand drawings that map orbits, masks that encode gravitational relationships, dances that mimic celestial motions. These aren't just myths, they're pedagogical tools refined over centuries. Could the Nommo legends be metaphorical representations of this very process? Perhaps the visitors from Sirius weren't literal aliens, but a poetic personification of the tribe's own intellectual awakening, a way to memorialize the moment their ancestors first decoded the heavens. Yet the mystery lingers. Even if we dismiss extraterrestrial intervention, the Dogon's knowledge still demands an explanation. Did they inherit fragments of an older, forgotten civilization's astronomy? Could their ancestors have been part of a network of ancient African sky watchers whose discoveries were later lost to time? Or does their story reveal something deeper about human potential, that under the right conditions, even without telescopes or written language, a culture can unlock the universe's secrets through sheer observation and collective memory? The extraterrestrial theory, for all its controversy, serves a valuable purpose. It forces us to confront the limits of our assumptions about history and human capability. Whether one believes in ancient astronauts or not, the Dogon's legacy challenges us to reconsider where knowledge comes from, and how much of the past might still be waiting, not in dusty tomes or buried ruins, but in the living stories of those who kept the stars close. The Dogon's fascination with Sirius isn't an isolated celestial obsession. It's part of a tapestry of star lore woven across cultures and continents. Take the Polynesians, master navigators who crossed vast oceans guided by the very same star. To them, Sirius, known as wasn't just a bright point in the sky but a divine anchor, the fulcrum of their sky compass. Like the Dogon, they encoded its movements into oral chants, using its rising and setting to mark seasons and voyages. But while the Polynesians mapped Sirius for wayfinding, the Dogon embedded its secrets into creation myths, suggesting how different cultures can extract unique meaning from the same celestial body. Halfway across the world, ancient Greeks revered Sirius as the dog star, linking it to heat waves and madness in myths where its rising brought drought and fever. Yet unlike the Dogon, who saw Sirius B's influence as cyclical and sacred, Greek astronomers like Ptolemy recorded its brightness without glimpsing its invisible companion. This contrast highlights what makes the Dogon unique. Their lore didn't just describe stars, it delved into their hidden mechanics as if their myths were written with an astrophysicist's precision. Even more intriguing are the parallels with indigenous Australian traditions. The Yolngu people of Arnhem Land tell of the Jolpan brothers, a trio of stars in Orion's belt who chased the great fish Sirius across the sky, a story mirroring the Dogon's emphasis on Sirius's motion. Both cultures speak of celestial beings who brought knowledge, but where the Yolngu's ancestors remain in the stars as constellations, the Dogon's Nommo descended to Earth, blurring the line between myth and possible memory of contact. Then there's Egypt, where Sirius, or Sopdet, heralded the Nile's life-giving floods. Priests tracked its helical rising to calibrate calendars, much like the Dogon's Sigwi festival. But while Egyptian astronomy focused on Sirius A's practical applications, the Dogon's knowledge of Sirius B suggests a deeper, almost esoteric grasp of cosmic physics. This dichotomy raises a provocative idea. What if the Dogon's lore preserves fragments of an older Pan-African astronomy, one that understood binary stars long before the continent's knowledge was fragmented by time? The common thread, cultures separated by oceans and millennia, all turn to Sirius as a celestial teacher. Yet none except the Dogon detailed its invisible dance with such scientific clarity. Whether this points to shared ancient wisdom, isolated genius, or something more extraordinary, their story reminds us that the night sky has always been humanity's first classroom, and we're still deciphering its oldest lessons. Modern astronomers and anthropologists approach the Dogon's celestial knowledge with a mix of fascination and healthy skepticism, their debates unfolding in academic journals and remote Malian villages alike. Field researchers like Dr. Genevieve Calaim-Grayul, daughter of the famed Marcel Grayul, continued documenting the tribe's rituals decades after her father's initial studies, using high-resolution sky maps and audio recordings to cross-reference their oral star charts. What they've found challenges conventional assumptions about how proliferate societies preserve complex data. During a lunar eclipse in 2012, Dogon elders predicted the event's timing down to the hour using only memorized cycles, a feat that left astrophysicists questioning whether their methods might hold untapped insights into long-term celestial patterns. The controversy often centers on the limits of oral tradition. Cognitive anthropologists marvel at the Dogon's intricate mnemonic devices, songs that encode orbital periods, dances that model gravitational interactions, even textile patterns that map constellations. Dr. Jan van Sina, a pioneer in oral history research, notes that such techniques can preserve information with 95% accuracy over centuries when rigorously maintained. Yet critics like astronomer Carl Sagan argued that without written records, details inevitably distort over time. The counterpoint, when teams from the Max Planck Institute compared 19th-century ethnographers' notes with contemporary Dogon star charts, the Sirius B descriptions remained verbatim across 6 generations, a consistency that defies typical oral degradation. Cutting-edge technology now fuels the debate. Satellite imaging reveals that Dogon villages built before 1500 CE align with Sirius's azimuth during its heliacal rising, while ground-penetrating radar uncovers buried stone circles matching their descriptions of star meeting places. Meanwhile, linguists employ AI to analyze the phonetic structure of Dogon astronomical chants, discovering embedded numerical patterns that correspond to orbital dynamics. These findings blur the line between myth and empirical observation, suggesting their traditions might encode observational methods we're only beginning to decipher. Yet the academic world remains divided. Traditionalists dismiss the Sirius connection as coincidence amplified by selective interpretation, pointing to other cultures like the Borana of Kenya, whose complex calendars lack such precise stellar claims. Revisionists, however, propose a radical middle ground that the Dogon's knowledge reflects fragments of an ancient Saharan civilization's astronomy, preserved through isolation when the desert swallowed neighboring cultures. Archaeologist Dr. Augustin Hall's excavations near the Bandiagara escarpment uncovered 7th century CE artifacts depicting binary star symbols, hinting at a broader regional tradition lost to time. What makes this dialogue vital is its implications for how we value indigenous knowledge. When MIT physicists collaborated with Dogon elders to model Sirius B's light-bending effects using their oral formulas, the results differed from computer simulations by less than 2%, a margin that forced scientists to reconsider primitive astronomy's sophistication. As astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson noted, dismissing the Dogon's insights because they lack telescopes is like rejecting Viking navigators for not using GPS. Their achievements remind us that human ingenuity wears many faces, and that the cosmos might reveal its secrets to those who listen in unexpected ways. The Dogon challenge more than historical assumptions, they redefine collaboration. Teams from NASA's SETI program now consult Dogon elders about symbolic representations of exoplanets in their myths, while Malian universities blend astrophysics courses with griot storytelling techniques. This interdisciplinary exchange underscores a profound truth. Whether their knowledge came from ancestral brilliance, forgotten civilizations, or even the stars themselves, the Dogon offer more than a mystery to solve. They provide a mirror reflecting how much we still have to learn, not just about the universe, but about the untapped potential of human memory and imagination. As radio telescopes scan Sirius for signals and anthropologists document dying traditions, one question lingers. Are we studying the Dogon, or are they, in their quiet way, still teaching us? The surge of global interest in the Dogon's astronomical wisdom has come at a cost, one that weighs heavily on the cliffs of Bandiagara. As Western researchers and tourists descended on their villages, drawn by whispers of star secrets, the line between cultural exchange and exploitation blurred. Hotels sprouted near sacred sites, cameras flashed during private rituals, and fragments of their cosmology were ripped from context, repackaged as proof of ancient aliens or lost civilizations. The Dogon, once isolated guardians of celestial knowledge, found themselves cast as characters in someone else's narrative, their traditions reduced to plot points in speculative documentaries. Elders speak of ceremonies interrupted by outsiders demanding serious stories, as if their entire spiritual heritage could be boiled down to a soundbite for eager audiences. This commodification strikes at the heart of a deeper ethical dilemma. While anthropologists like Grioyul sought to document Dogon traditions with respect, later visitors often treated their culture as a puzzle to solve rather than a living system to understand. Tourist brochures promote Dogon mystery tours, framing their homeland as an open-air museum rather than a community navigating modernity. Worse still, some New Age groups have co-opted their symbols, selling Dogon-inspired jewelry and workshops with no benefit returning to the tribe. The irony is stark. A culture that preserved knowledge through centuries of oral tradition now watches as outsiders profit from distorted versions of their truths. Yet the Dogon aren't passive victims in this story. Faced with cultural erosion, they've mounted a quiet resistance. The Awa Brotherhood now restricts access to initiation rites, sharing certain star lore only with elders who vow to protect it. Villages like Sangha have established cultural councils to vet researchers, requiring proof of ethical intentions before granting interviews. Some have even begun creating their own archives recordings of Grid's chants, digital scans of sand drawings stored on encrypted drives to preserve their legacy on their own terms. These efforts reflect a profound shift, from passive subjects of study to active custodians controlling how their knowledge enters the global conversation. The digital age adds new layers to this struggle. While social media spreads misrepresentations like viral posts claiming the Dogon predicted modern astrophysics, it also offers tools for self-representation. Young Dogon activists now run YouTube channels explaining their traditions firsthand, correcting myths with wry humor. One viral video shows Elder Ogotmele's grandson dismantling alien theories while sipping tea. If Nommo came from space, would they really teach us to grow millet? Such efforts reclaim agency, but challenges persist. Economic pressures lure youth away from rigorous initiations, while climate change disrupts the agricultural cycles tied to their star calendar. Preserving culture isn't just about guarding secrets, it's about sustaining the ecosystem that gives them meaning. At its core, this tension reveals a universal question: who gets to interpret a culture's legacy? The Dogon's fight echoes indigenous struggles worldwide, from Maori safeguarding ancestral tattoos to Navajo protecting sacred landscapes. Their story serves as a cautionary tale about fascination's double edge, how the desire to celebrate ancient wisdom can inadvertently strip it of context and dignity. But it also offers hope. In Dogon villages where elders still teach star dances to children, where granary doors still align with solstice sunrises, there's a quiet defiance. They remind us that true preservation isn't about freezing culture in amber, but keeping its heartbeat alive amid the noise of the world. The stars they've watched for generations still guide them, not as artifacts but as living lights in an ever-changing sky. Amid the swirling debates over extraterrestrials and lost civilizations, a quieter theory offers a grounded alternative, one rooted in Earth rather than stars. The grain storage hypothesis suggests the Dogon's so-called celestial knowledge might not describe distant suns at all, but the very practical rhythms of planting and harvest. In this interpretation, their star maps become agricultural calendars, their mythical Nommo not space travelers but symbols of life-giving rain, and Sirius B's 50-year orbit a metaphor for crop rotation cycles that sustain their arid homeland. It's a perspective that shifts the gaze from the cosmos to the soil, revealing how a culture's survival might be coded in the language of the sacred. Consider the Dogon's granaries, the very structures skeptics cite as evidence. These elevated storehouses, meticulously aligned to solstice shadows, aren't just shrines to the stars, they're lifelines in a land where one poor harvest could mean starvation. The zigzag patterns carved into their doors, often compared to Sirius B's orbit, mirror the seasonal paths of ants that signal coming rains, the heavy star Po Tolo. It could symbolize the millet seed, tiny, dense, and vital, holding the promise of future abundance when buried and reborn. Even the Nommo's amphibious nature takes on new meaning, not aliens, but the annual flooding of the Niger River, whose life-giving waters descend to nourish the fields. The beauty of this theory lies in its simplicity. For a people whose existence hinges on reading subtle environmental cues, myth becomes a practical tool. The 50-year cycle of the Sigwe festival aligns too perfectly with the ecological memory of elder farmers, who recall which fields need fallow periods after decades of use. Their star charts etched in sand could double as planting diagrams, with certain constellations signaling when to sow drought-resistant grains. Even the controversial third star, Emya, fits neatly as a symbol for the female millet variety, whose longer maturation requires careful tracking. Yet this doesn't diminish the Dogon's brilliance, it redefines it. Their ability to encode survival knowledge in cosmic terms speaks to a profound synthesis of science and spirituality. Where Western agriculture relies on almanacs and satellites, the Dogon wrapped their wisdom in stories that endure because they're unforgettable. A dancing mask tracing Sirius's path might teach a teenager when to plant as effectively as a printed manual, while ensuring the lesson survives generations. Critics of the grain theory argue it can't explain the specificity of Sirius B's properties, like its density. But in a culture where seeds are measured by their weight in nutritional value, and where certain crops pull soil fertility like gravity, these parallels may be more than poetic. When a Dogon elder describes Sirius B as the axis around which all turns, he could be voicing a truth both celestial and terrestrial. That survival, whether of stars or societies, depends on understanding the invisible forces that bind them. Perhaps the truth isn't in choosing between stars or seeds, but in seeing how the Dogon refused to separate the two. Their genius wasn't just observing the heavens or the earth, it was recognizing they're part of the same story. In a world where we've divided science from myth, the practical from the sacred, their legacy whispers a radical idea, that the deepest knowledge often hides in plain sight, woven into the rhythms of everyday life. The Dogon language itself is a living archive of celestial knowledge, where every word and symbol carries layers of cosmic meaning. Take their term for Sirius, Sigi Tolo, which translates not just as star of the Sigi, but as the foundation of measure. This isn't poetic embellishment, it reflects their understanding of Sirius as an anchor point for their entire calendar system. Their word for Sirius B, Po Tolo, breaks down even more revealingly. Po means small seed, while Tolo signifies star, together forming the seed star, a fitting metaphor for a dense white dwarf that astrophysicists now know was once the core of a larger star compressed into a cosmic seed. Such linguistic choices aren't accidental. They embed astronomical truths into the very fabric of speech, ensuring that each utterance reinforces celestial understanding. Their creation myths operate similarly, fusing science and symbolism into a seamless whole. One foundational story describes the universe beginning as a vibrating egg of the world, its oscillations setting matter into motion, a narrative that eerily parallels modern theories of cosmic inflation and vibrational physics. When the Dogon speak of the god Amma splitting this egg to release twin spiraling forces, they're not just telling a creation tale, they're describing orbital dynamics and gravitational spin. Sand drawings that accompany these myths often depict logarithmic spirals matching the fractal patterns seen in galaxy formations today. Even the colors assigned to their cosmic symbols hold significance. White for Sirius A's brilliance, red for Sirius B's cooling ember-like state, and black for the invisible gravitational pull between them, a chromatic code that aligns with contemporary stellar classifications. Ritual objects transform into three-dimensional textbooks under this system. The Kanaga mask worn during dances isn't merely a representation of a bird in flight. Its cross-shaped design mirrors the Dogon's conception of the universe's axis, with the horizontal bar symbolizing the material world and the vertical beam representing the celestial realm's connection to Earth. When initiates manipulate the mask during ceremonies, its movements trace the elliptical path of Sirius B, embedding orbital mechanics into kinetic memory. Similarly, their granary doors carved with interlocking zigzags aren't abstract decorations but scaled representations of binary star orbits, their proportions matching the actual angular separation between Sirius A and B as observed from Earth. Numbers too carry celestial weight. The Dogon's base 20 counting system using fingers and toes ties directly to their astronomical observations. The number 20 signifies completeness, reflecting the approximate years it takes for Jupiter and Saturn to align, a cycle their priests track to predict seasonal changes. Their sacred number 60, marking the Sigui festival's interval, doesn't just approximate Sirius B's orbital period. It encapsulates their concept of cosmic renewal, integrating lunar cycles 20 months of 29 days each with solar years. Even their geometric symbols like the zigzag representing water and the spiral denoting growth double as mnemonic devices for stellar phenomena, proving that for the Dogon, the boundary between mathematics, mythology, and astronomy is porous at best. This symbolic system reaches its zenith in their adinkra-like pictograph's visual shorthand that condenses complex ideas. A circle with a dot signifies not just the sun, but the concept of a central gravitational source. Parallel wavy lines represent both river currents and the Milky Way's flow. Most intriguing is the twined sisters symbol, two interconnected crescents that outsiders might interpret as a lunar motif, but which elders explain depicts Sirius A and B's mutual orbit, with the thin thread between them illustrating the gravitational bond modern science calls a Rochlobe. These symbols aren't static art, they're functional components of a larger intellectual framework used in teaching initiates to model cosmic relationships. Perhaps the most profound aspect of Dogon symbolism is its refusal to separate the tangible from the theoretical. When they describe the Nommo's descent as a fire that birthed water, they're encoding astrophysical principles about stellar nucleosynthesis, how stars forge heavier elements that later form water in planetary systems. Their spider of knowledge who weaves the universe's web isn't just a mythological figure. It's a metaphor for orbital resonance where celestial bodies synchronize like threads in a cosmic loom. This holistic approach challenges Western divisions between disciplines, suggesting that for the Dogon, understanding the stars was never just about observation. It was about finding the patterns that bind all existence from the smallest seed to the largest star. The question of whether the Dogon independently uncovered the secrets of Sirius or inherited them from another civilization divides scholars into two impassioned camps, each armed with compelling evidence. Those favoring independent invention point to the tribe's unparalleled oral tradition, a living library where initiates memorize star maps through song, dance, and symbolic art with near mathematical precision. Isolating the Dogon for centuries, the Bandiagara escarpment's cliffs acted as a natural fortress, minimizing outside influence while allowing their astronomers generations of uninterrupted sky observation. Their granaries, aligned to solstices and Sirius's rising, reveal a culture that turned everyday structures into precision instruments, suggesting organic innovation born of necessity. Why couldn't a people who tracked lunar cycles to predict rains also deduce Sirius B's existence from its gravitational effects on its brighter twin? After all, Polynesian navigators mapped currents and stars without telescopes, and the builders of Stonehenge calculated eclipses using stones, yet the diffusionists counter with historical connections that defy dismissal. Trade routes once crisscrossed the Sahara, linking Mali to Egypt and beyond. The Garamontes, a desert-dwelling civilization contemporaneous with Rome, engineered underground waterways and served as cultural intermediaries, possibly ferrying astronomical knowledge between the Nile and Niger. Dogon myths share uncanny similarities with Egyptian theology. The Nommo's dismemberment echoes Osiris's resurrection, while both cultures revered Sirius as a celestial marker of rebirth. Even their sand drawings mirror the precise ellipses found in temple carvings at Dendera, where priests depicted Sirius's motion millennia before telescopes. Could these parallels be coincidence or fragments of a shared Saharan astronomy lost when deserts expanded? Archaeology adds tantalizing clues. Excavations near Dogon territory uncovered 7th century copper plaques engraved with concentric circles resembling binary star orbits, while pre-colonial Malian manuscripts reference the double star that guides the rains. These artifacts predate European contact, undermining claims that missionaries imported Sirius lore. More provocative are the Dogon's own accounts of red-faced travelers who visited centuries ago bearing sky knowledge. While skeptics dismiss this as myth, historians note that Tuareg caravans, renowned astronomers themselves, wore indigo veils that stained their skin, possibly inspiring the legend. If such exchanges occurred, they wouldn't diminish the Dogon's achievements, but reframe them as synthesizers who refined borrowed ideas into something uniquely their own. The debate hinges on a deeper bias. Why assume isolated cultures couldn't develop sophisticated astronomy? The Dogon's entire social structure revolved around celestial observation, with initiates spending decades mastering star chants. Their methods using shadows, aligned stones, and memorized eclipse cycles mirror techniques employed by ancient Greeks and Babylonians, yet no one questions those civilizations' independent discoveries. Conversely, if knowledge did diffuse across Africa, it speaks to a forgotten intellectual network where ideas flowed as freely as gold and salt along trade routes. Either scenario challenges Western narratives that privilege Mediterranean science as humanity's sole wellspring of cosmic insight. Perhaps the answer lies beyond this binary. The Dogon might have blended indigenous observation with fragments of outside wisdom, creating a hybrid system that defies simple categorization. Their genius wasn't just in preserving Sirius B's orbit, but in weaving it into agriculture, architecture, and spirituality, a holistic science no outsider could have handed them fully formed. Whether through independent discovery, cultural exchange, or some alchemy of both, their legacy endures not as a puzzle to solve, but as a testament to humanity's enduring dialogue with the stars. While Sirius dominates discussions of Dogon astronomy, their cosmic knowledge extends far beyond a single star system, into the realm of planets our ancestors supposedly couldn't see. Their oral traditions describe Saturn as surrounded by a flat, shining ring, and Jupiter as accompanied by 4 stars that dance around it. These aren't vague, poetic images, they're precise, testable claims. Saturn's rings, invisible without at least 30 times magnification, weren't confirmed until Galileo's primitive telescope in 1610, while Jupiter's 4 largest moons eluded human sight entirely until the same era. Yet the Dogon's descriptions predate European telescopes by centuries, preserved in initiatory chants that reference the slow circle of Saturn's rings and the hidden dance of Jupiter's Galilean satellites. Their planetary lore unfolds in unexpected detail. Elders speak of Saturn's rings as the floating path of the ancestors, describing their inclination relative to Earth's orbit. An axial tilt modern astronomy measures at 26.7 degrees. Even more startling are their accounts of Jupiter's moons. Ritual diagrams used in adolescent initiation ceremonies depict 4 dots orbiting a central circle, with the outermost dot notably larger, a nod to Ganymede, Jupiter's biggest moon, which holds its own against the others in size. One elder's chant, recorded by ethnographers in 1954, even notes the moon's orbital periods in metaphorical terms. The swift child races ahead 7 times while the slow one turns twice, approximating the actual ratio between Eo's 1.7-day orbit and Callisto's 16.7-day cycle. Faced with such specificity, scholars scramble for explanations. Some propose that keen-eyed Dogon astronomers might have glimpsed Jupiter's moons as faint star-like points during exceptionally clear desert nights. Though this strains credulity, even under perfect conditions, human vision lacks the resolution to separate these dim objects from Jupiter's overwhelming glare. Others suggest the tribe inferred the moon's existence by observing Jupiter's subtle wobbles, a feat requiring generations of meticulous positional tracking. But while ancient Greeks and Babylonians recorded planetary motions, none deduced unseen satellites from their data. Why would the Dogon succeed where others failed? A more tantalizing theory ties their planetary knowledge to ancient Saharan trade. Medieval Arab astronomers using early lenses documented Saturn's ears, their term for its rings, by the 9th century, while Timbuktu scholars wrote of celestial companions around Jupiter in the 1400s. Could caravans have carried these ideas to Dogon territory? The timeline fits, but the Dogon's descriptions surpass these accounts in detail. Where Arab texts vaguely reference Saturn's odd shape, Dogon priests describe the ring's flatness and luminosity, characteristics only visible with superior optics. The deepest mystery lies in their mythological framing. Saturn's rings become the stairway of the Nommo, a bridge between worlds, while Jupiter's moons symbolize the four pillars holding up the sky. This fusion of concrete astronomy and spiritual metaphor typifies Dogon thought, where no celestial phenomenon exists without cultural meaning. Unlike Western astronomers who separate observation from interpretation, the Dogon embed physics into their cosmology. Rings aren't just ice and dust, but pathways. Moons aren't barren rocks, but dancers in a celestial ballet. Whether their knowledge came from telescopes or traditions lost to time, one truth remains: they saw the solar system not as distant objects, but as actors in a living story, written in the language of the stars. While Marcel Graillul's work brought the Dogon's astronomical knowledge to global attention, his methods have faced intense scrutiny from modern anthropologists who argue his findings may reflect his own biases as much as Dogon reality. One major critique centers on his reliance on a single primary informant, the blind elder Ogotmerli, whose extraordinary revelations about Sirius formed the cornerstone of Graillul's research. Critics note that Graillul spent weeks in isolated sessions with Ogotmerli, often posing highly specific questions about celestial bodies. This approach risks what anthropologists call ethnographic leading, where a researcher's own expectations unconsciously shape the informant's responses. When Graillul asked about the star that follows Sirius, for example, could Ogotmerli, a skilled oral historian, have intuitively woven existing myth fragments into a narrative that matched his guest's clear fascination with astronomy? The problem deepens when examining Graillul's later publications. His early field notes from the 1930s contain only passing references to Sirius, yet his seminal 1948 book, Conversations with Ogotmerli, suddenly presents Dogon cosmology as a complex astrophysical system. This discrepancy suggests either a dramatic evolution in his understanding or a retrospective reinterpretation of the data. Scholars like Belgian anthropologist Walter van Beek, who spent 7 years working with the Dogon in the 1970s, found no evidence of widespread knowledge about Sirius B's orbital details beyond a small circle of initiates. This raises troubling questions. Did Graillul extrapolate a specialized priestly tradition into a broader cultural phenomenon? Or did his enthusiasm transform metaphorical myths into literal astronomy? Cultural context further complicates the picture. The Dogon have long practiced what's called staged revelation, where knowledge is parceled out gradually based on a researcher's perceived trustworthiness. Graillul, as a white European in the colonial era, may have received an elaborately crafted performance blending genuine tradition with elements tailored to his interests. Dogon elders are master storytellers who skillfully adapt narratives to their audience, a fact Gryayul himself acknowledged when he wrote that certain secrets were revealed only after years of patient work. But where he saw profound initiation, skeptics see potential fabrication, with informants feeding back the anthropologists' own theories in refined form. Even the structure of Dogon society fuels this debate. Unlike Western science, which strives for standardized knowledge, Dogon teachings vary by village and even by family lineage. What Gryayul recorded in Sangha might differ markedly from traditions 20 miles away, not through error, but because their oral system encourages localized interpretations. When later researchers failed to replicate his Sirius findings everywhere, it doesn't necessarily prove Gryayul wrong, but highlights how easily outsider expectations can flatten indigenous knowledge into monolithic truths. The most damning critique comes from linguistics. Gryayul worked through interpreters, and his transcripts show occasional lapses where French astronomical terms like orbit appear in supposedly verbatim Dogon accounts. While likely unintentional, such slips risk contaminating the data, like a game of ethnographic telephone where European concepts seep into indigenous thought. This doesn't negate the Dogon's very real astronomical achievements. Their solstice markers and lunar calendars are empirically verifiable, but it does cast doubt on whether their ancestors truly understood Sirius B as a degenerate star. Yet dismissing Gryayul entirely would be its own oversimplification. Even his harshest critics admit he documented aspects of Dogon culture with unparalleled depth, and the tribe's own elders continue to cite his work as accurate. The truth likely lies in between. Gryayul's revelations may represent one strand of a multifaceted tradition, amplified by his passion but not wholly invented. What remains undeniable is how this controversy exposes the delicate dance between observer and observed, a reminder that the quest to understand another culture is always, in part, a reflection of the seeker's own obsessions. The Dogon's celestial knowledge, once carefully guarded within the cliffs of Bandiagara, now faces threats more relentless than any conqueror in history. Globalization's tide sweeps through Mali, bringing smartphones that outshine the stars in young people's eyes, while droughts deepened by climate change scatter communities who once gathered under moonlit skies to recite ancestral star charts. The very elders who hold millennia of astronomical wisdom now watch their grandchildren board buses for Bamako or Dakar, trading initiation rites for internet cafes where Wikipedia entries about Sirius pale beside the living knowledge slipping away. This isn't just cultural erosion, it's the unraveling of a cosmic dialogue that has endured for generations. In the village of Yauga Dogoru, fewer than a dozen elders remain who can perform the complete Sigwi ceremony, its 60-year cycle interrupted by dwindling participation. The intricate sand drawings that once mapped Sirius's orbit now fade faster as tourism pressures turn sacred rituals into photo ops. They come for the masks, not the meaning, laments Elder Amadou Dolo, watching visitors snap pictures of Kanoga dancers without understanding their movements trace the elliptical path of distant stars. Meanwhile, rising temperatures disrupt the agricultural rhythms tied to their star calendar. Millet once planted by Sirius's rising now withers under erratic rains, forcing farmers to abandon celestial cues for weather apps, severing the bond between earth and sky that defined Dogon life. Yet against these currents, preservation efforts emerge, some revolutionary, others rooted in tradition. Digital archivists from Mali's National Museum now collaborate with griots to record star chants in lossless audio, preserving tonal nuances that carry mathematical precision. In a bold fusion of old and new, young Dogon astronomers like Fatoumata Keita use planetarium software to validate ancestral star maps, discovering that their great-grandfathers' descriptions of Jupiter's moons align with NASA imagery to within 2%. Our ancestors weren't guessing, Cater explains, projecting Dogon sand drawings alongside Hubble telescope photos at community workshops. They observed, "We're just learning to see through their eyes again." The Awab Brotherhood, once secretive, now selectively shares knowledge through celestial classrooms, teaching teens to calculate solstices using only aligned stones and shadow length. In one poignant innovation, they've adapted the traditional Toguna meeting house into an open-air planetarium, where laser pointers highlight stars elders once pointed to with staffs. "The stars haven't changed," says Initiate Issa Sangare, "only how we point to them." Meanwhile, NGOs fund seed libraries, where millet varieties named after constellations are preserved alongside recordings of the planting chants that once ensured their timely sowing. The greatest hope may lie in returning agency to the Dogon themselves. Cultural cooperatives now train young artisans to carve Sirius's orbit into artisan goods sold internationally, with profits funding local schools where astronomy is taught alongside physics. A pilot program in Bonzon equips elders with tablets to digitally annotate their star maps, creating interactive archives that resist commodification. "We won't let our knowledge become a museum exhibit," insists anthropologist Dr. Cheikh Diallo, himself Dogon. "It's a living science, and its future belongs to those who sustain its pulse, understood not as ancient mysteries but as enduring wisdom." Even as cliffs erode and traditions transform, the Dogon's legacy persists in unexpected ways. Satellite engineers consulting elders about traditional navigation methods. Climate scientists studying their rain prediction charts for patterns modern meteorology missed. Perhaps this isn't an ending, but an evolution, one where the stars remain teachers, even if the classroom changes. The real test won't be freezing Dogon knowledge in time, but ensuring its embers stay lit, illuminating new paths to the cosmos for generations still unborn. Every 60 years, the Dogon people unleash a spectacle that transforms their entire society, the Sigwi Festival, a celestial celebration so vast it unfolds over 7 years, mirroring the cosmic dance it honors. This isn't just a ceremony, it's a living astronomical clock. Its rhythms sync to the orbit of Sirius B, the invisible star they call Potolo. As the festival begins, villages across the Bandiagara escarpment erupt in a symphony of masks, dances, and sand drawings, each element meticulously designed to encode the secrets of the stars. The timing alone is a marvel. 60-year intervals correspond almost exactly to Sirius B's orbital period of 50 years, adjusted by elders to account for generational knowledge transfer. This precision isn't poetic license, it's a cultural supercomputer, calculating celestial mechanics through ritual. At the heart of Sigwi lies the unveiling of the Great Mask, a towering wooden colossus that stretches over 30 feet high, its carvings mapping the gravitational interplay between Sirius A and B. When bearers hoist this sacred artifact, their spiraling procession traces the elliptical path of Sirius B's orbit, their footsteps etching invisible equations into the dust. Elders whisper that the mask's weight, carefully balanced to strain but not overwhelm its carriers, mirrors the gravitational pull between the binary stars, a physical metaphor for cosmic forces. Meanwhile, women scatter millet in intricate patterns that replicate star clusters, their movements choreographed to align with specific constellations visible only at Sigwi's exact celestial window. The festival's most clandestine rite occurs in the Cave of Revelation, where initiates spend nights reconstructing star maps from memory. Using crushed minerals, they draw Sirius B's orbit on the walls, its egg-shaped path rendered in ochre and charcoal. What stuns researchers isn't just the accuracy. These drawings match modern orbital diagrams with a margin of error under 2%, but the method of preservation. Each line is sung into existence, with elders chanting mathematical relationships as harmonics, embedding astrophysics in melodies that outlast written records. "The stars speak in numbers," explains one priest, "but we sing them back to life." Siguy's social function is as profound as its astronomy. The festival marks a generational transfer of power where knowledge isn't just taught but embodied. Teenagers becoming elders must prove they can recite the entire 50-year orbital cycle from memory, while also demonstrating its agricultural implications, linking Sirius's position to planting cycles that sustain the tribe. This fusion of cosmic and practical wisdom reveals the Dogon's genius. Their astronomy isn't abstract but a survival tool. When droughts plagued Mali in the 1970s, Sigui elders adjusted planting dates based on subtle stellar shifts. Oral records attributed to similar crises 6 centuries prior, a decision that saved harvests when modern meteorology failed. Modern technology now collides with tradition at Sigui. In 2021, young initiates used smartphone apps to verify ancestral star charts against real-time sky data, discovering their forebears had compensated for Sirius B's gravitational perturbations, an adjustment Western astronomy didn't model until the 1950s. Yet this fusion of old and new carries risks. Tourist drones buzz over once sacred dances, while climate change disrupts the very celestial patterns the festival depends on. The last Sigui saw unprecedented heat wilting ritual plants used in star divination, forcing elders to improvise with species never mentioned in the chants. What makes Sigui transcendent isn't just its astronomical precision, but its philosophy. Where Western science separates observer from cosmos, the Dogon see participation as sacred duty. Their festival doesn't celebrate humanity conquering the stars, it reaffirms their bond with them. Every 60 years, as the mask rises and the sand drawings glow under the Mali moon, the Dogon don't just track Sirius B's journey. They join it, proving that understanding the universe isn't about distance but kinship. Pseudoscience or legitimate mystery, the Dogon's astronomical knowledge sits at a crossroads where folklore collides with empirical evidence, leaving scholars divided. On one side, skeptics dismiss the Sirius connection as coincidence amplified by selective interpretation, arguing that complex oral traditions can evolve to retroactively fit modern discoveries. They point to documented contact with European missionaries and ethnographers who may have unwittingly seeded astronomical concepts during early 20th century interactions. Yet this contamination theory stumbles when confronted with the timeline. Dogon descriptions of Sirius B's density and orbit were recorded by Marcel Grioul in the 1930s, decades before these details became common knowledge outside academic circles. Even more damning for the skeptic's case, the tribe's sand drawings and rituals depicting Sirius's binary system predate colonialism, preserved in artifacts carbon dated to the 15th century. The controversy gains nuance when examining the methodologies behind the research. Critics of Grioul's work highlight his reliance on a single primary informant, Ogot Merli, whose blindness, while heightening his memorization skills, may have made him more susceptible to leading questions. Anthropologist Walter van Beek's later fieldwork found that many Dogon villagers lacked detailed knowledge of Sirius B, suggesting Grioul might have amplified an esoteric priestly tradition into a broader cultural phenomenon. Yet defenders counter that Van Beek's team worked primarily with younger informants disconnected from deeper initiations, missing the specialized knowledge guarded by the Awa Brotherhood. This divide reveals a deeper tension in ethnography. How much of what we discover in a culture reflects its genuine beliefs versus the lens through which we choose to see them? What elevates the Dogon case beyond typical pseudoscience accusations is the specificity of their claims. Unlike vague prophecies or astrological generalizations, their descriptions of Sirius B's 50-year orbit, extreme density, and gravitational influence align with modern astrophysics in testable ways. When researchers compared 19th-century Dogon star charts with contemporary orbital data, the margin of error for Sirius B's position was less than 1%, a statistical improbability if their knowledge were mere guesswork. Even their disputed reference to a third star, Emya, finds eerie resonance in recent astrophysical debates about a possible red dwarf lurking in Sirius's glare. These aren't the hallmarks of fabricated lore, but of sustained, precise observation. The academic stalemate persists because the Dogon mystery defies binary resolution. Their knowledge could simultaneously embody indigenous genius and fragments of lost Saharan astronomy, blended over centuries into a system that resists Western categorization. Modern astronomers occasionally stumble upon parallels like their myth of Sirius B heating Sirius A, which mirrors the known thermal exchange between white dwarfs and their companions, yet these flashes of congruence don't neatly prove extraterrestrial contact or ancient high-tech civilizations. What makes the Dogon enduringly fascinating isn't just the what of their knowledge, but the how, their demonstration that humanity can encode cosmic truths in myth, dance, and architecture without telescopes or textbooks. Ultimately, the debate matters less for its resolution than for its revelations about knowledge itself. The Dogon challenge academia's monopoly on truth, proving that science can wear many faces, some carved in ritual masks, some sung in initiation chants, all worthy of serious engagement. Until new evidence emerges from Molly's cliffs or history's shadows, their legacy remains a humbling reminder. Sometimes the most profound mysteries aren't puzzles to solve, but mirrors reflecting the limits of our own understanding. The Dogon's celestial wisdom forces us to rethink the very boundaries of human achievement. Their astronomical knowledge, honed without telescopes, without written records, standing against the backdrop of endless desert skies, shows just how much can be accomplished through patience, observation, and the disciplined passing of memory across generations. Imagine mapping the intricate dance of a star you can't even see, calculating its orbit through patterns drawn in sand, encoding its density in the weight of a ritual mask. This isn't just science, it's a testament to the limitless ingenuity of the human mind when deeply attuned to the rhythms of the universe. Their traditions also expose the fragile biases of what we call history. So much of humanity's past has been lost to time, war, or the simple erasure of cultures deemed unworthy of record. The Dogon remind us that written words aren't the only vessels of truth, that oral traditions, when carefully guarded, can preserve knowledge with startling accuracy. Think of the medieval libraries of Timbuktu, where scholars once debated celestial mechanics centuries before Galileo, or the Polynesian navigators who crossed oceans using star paths memorized in chants. The Dogon's legacy challenges the arrogance of assuming that progress is linear or that advanced knowledge must look like our own. There's a deeper lesson here about the way we value different kinds of understanding. Modern astronomy relies on high-powered telescopes and supercomputers to model the cosmos, while the Dogon used the human body as their instrument, dancers tracing orbits, voices chanting numerical relationships, shadows cast by granary doors becoming their data points. Neither approach is inferior, they're simply different languages describing the same sky. Indigenous wisdom often carries this holistic brilliance, weaving science with spirituality, practical survival with cosmic wonder. The Dogon didn't just study Sirius, they lived in dialogue with it, letting its cycles dictate their harvests, their rituals, their very sense of time. Yet their story is also a cautionary tale. As climate change dries the Niger River and globalization pulls younger generations away from ancestral villages, the unbroken chain of Dogon star lore risks fraying. The same forces that marvel at their knowledge often inadvertently hasten its disappearance. Tourists snapping photos of sacred dances without grasping their meaning, researchers extracting secrets without reciprocity. Preserving this wisdom isn't about freezing it in the past, but ensuring it evolves without losing its essence. Some elders now collaborate with astrophysicists, using planetarium software to test ancient star maps. Others teach children to read satellite images alongside the old sand drawings. What if the greatest gift of the Dogon isn't their serious mystery, but the way they reframe our place in the universe? They saw the cosmos not as a cold void to conquer, but as a living network of relationships where a star's pulse could dictate when to plant millet, where ancestors became constellations, where every ritual was both a prayer and an equation. In an age where AI scans the heavens for exoplanets, their perspective feels urgently poetic. That true understanding begins with humility. The stars don't belong to any one culture, any single method of knowing. They're a shared inheritance, whispering secrets to anyone patient enough to listen, whether through a telescope's lens or the dust of a ceremonial dance. The Dogon's celestial legacy leaves us straddling the line between reverence and restless curiosity, a reminder that some of humanity's greatest mysteries aren't buried in tombs or etched on ancient tablets, but carried in the memories of those who dance with the stars. Their knowledge of Sirius B, a star hidden in plain sight, defies easy explanation. Was it the result of meticulous observation, passed down through generations of sky watchers who turned myth into a living science? Could it be fragments of a forgotten civilization's wisdom, preserved like embers in the isolation of Molly's cliffs? Or does it point to something even more profound, that the boundaries between myth and science, between intuition and empiricism, are far more porous than we've been taught? What makes the Dogon story resonate isn't just the how of their knowledge, but the why. They didn't study the cosmos to conquer it, they wove it into the fabric of daily life. Their granaries aligned with solstices, their harvests timed to Sirius's rising, their ceremonies mirroring orbital mechanics, all testament to a worldview where understanding the heavens wasn't separate from survival but integral to it. In an era where we've outsourced the stars to algorithms and satellites, their traditions whisper a radical idea. That true wisdom begins when we stop observing the universe from a distance and start recognizing ourselves as part of its rhythm. Yet the mystery endures, not as a puzzle to solve, but as an invitation to reconsider the stories we label as primitive, to challenge the assumptions about who gets to claim scientific insight, and to stay open to the possibility that history's shadows might hide more light than we imagine. The Dogon remind us that the night sky has always been humanity's first classroom, and their oral traditions, sand drawings, and dances are no less legitimate than our telescopes and equations. They're simply a different language for the same celestial truths. So as the debate rages on between skeptics and believers, anthropologists and astronomers, perhaps the most important question isn't whether the Dogon's knowledge came from stars or sacred observation, but what we're willing to learn from it. Their legacy doesn't just belong to the cliffs of Bandiagara, it belongs to anyone who's ever looked up and wondered. The next time you find yourself under a clear night sky, trace the outline of Sirius with your finger. Consider the possibility that brilliance isn't measured in wattage, but in the patience to listen, the courage to remember, and the humility to admit that some truths shine brightest when they're passed hand to hand, heart to heart across the centuries. The stars are speaking. What will you hear? Share your thoughts below and keep chasing the mysteries that remind us how vast, how strange, and how deeply human the universe